Yeah, the subtitle used to be "No, you cannot make it all up." Okay? Thank you. Is anybody here writing about 20th century history by any chance, or setting their? Okay. One of the books I wrote for was from Facts on File, and a lot of libraries have this series. It's called Day by Day, and it has Day by Day the 1910s, Day by Day the 1920s, the 1930s. I'm responsible for 1937 and 38. And what they are is each year has a slender volume that tells you all the news stories day by day, all the things that happened, what was going on in Europe. In 37 and 38, of course, was very active. What cultural things were going on. One of the things I found in 1937 was The Hobbit was published for the first time. So it's all sorts of, what would a person see in the newspapers on any given day of the year? And so it's a really valuable research, and like I said, a lot of libraries have it. But anyway, Day by Day. Day by Day the 1930s, Day by Day the 1940s. I think they've completed the whole thing now. And it's published by Facts on File. Okay, so like you said, I got a master's degree in American history, so it's nothing but research. And I did encyclopedia articles and magazine articles. I wrote what's back there, Death Speaker, a novel of ancient Gaul, set in just on the eve of when Caesar started his 8-year campaign to annex Gaul. And Gaul is France. And it was a land filled with Celtic tribes, some big and powerful and some rather small and peaceful. And Caesar just marched in, and they all reacted in different ways to him. Some thought they could ally with him, etc. But my book is from the point of view of the people who are being conquered, even if they don't realize it at first. I then wrote the Boomer Book of Christmas Memories, which is nonfiction, and I have some back there. It is all the absolutely true stories behind the Christmas traditions and holiday traditions of the late 40s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s. I think I finished with Pet Rocks. And it includes toys. Half of it's on toys, like Slinkies and Chatty Cathy's and Barbies and G.I. Joes. But it's also about aluminum Christmas trees and butterball turkeys and how the Grinch stole Christmas and all that stuff. And there's a fascinating story behind each of them. But again, it's all, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
It is all research. And so what I'm going to talk about today,
Feel free to take a moment if you want.
that's okay. What I'm going to talk about is, I can have her heat it up later, I'm sure. How to do, why research matters. There's two really big reasons why research matters. It's critical. How to do research, how to get a list of the books you need and the articles you need, how to get those books. I have a feeling I'm preaching to the choir, and you may know a lot of this, so I'm sorry. Some tips on organizing your research. And then I have a couple of handouts, one on some informational sites that I think are great, and one on places where you can still get a lot of free pictures, either for inspiration or to use in your book. So, why research matters. The first reason is that it stops you from making really embarrassing mistakes. And I know you don't want to go on for hours because I could give you examples. I once threw a book 30 years ago, and I still remember it. A woman wrote in her book about a town in Italy that I think it was the new moon rose at twilight, which can't happen. And I was so furious that this woman had not even bothered to go outside and look at the phases of the moon that I threw the book out. So it can really damage you. I have some cherry-picked quotes from an article by Maura Allen, who used to, and I think still does, have an online e-zine, and she wrote a book about research, and she said it so beautifully. She said, "You can be sure that whether you set your tale in Delhi or Detroit or Dublin, you will attract readers who are intimately familiar with the locale. So when a writer makes errors in facts, the illusion of reality is shattered, and the reader's suspension of disbelief is shattered. Disgruntled readers, therefore, tend to be very vocal readers, and they have many ways to spread the word about writers who displease them. Readers who feel that a work lacks accuracy and authenticity don't hesitate to declare their dissatisfaction via such venues as Amazon reviews, blogs, and social media. So that's the first reason you don't want to embarrass yourself with putting anything wrong in the book. They will catch you. Your readers will know if you don't do the research. And you're writing fiction, you want them to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning with your book. Keep turning those pages, unable to put it down. The minute they see an error, that ruins it for them. And even if you're writing nonfiction, people are buying your book because they're assuming you're an expert. If they start finding mistakes in your book, you're no longer the expert. Why did they waste their money on you? So that's the first reason. The second reason is that research adds detail and cover. And here's my slideshow presentation of it. I picked 2 books by Lauren Hildenbrandt because they both had movies made out of them. Seabiscuit. Yeah. I didn't know if it would work. Seabiscuit and Unbroken about Louis Zamperini. Seabiscuit takes place in the Depression, and you feel it in every page of that book. How many have read either of these books? Okay. You really feel the hopelessness of people in the Depression. In the Unbroken, she did something like 80 or 90 interviews with Louis Zamperini. All of them were under 25 minutes. Lauren Hildenbrandt has chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah. So it is, she never leaves her home. Everything has to be brought to her. She can only work in short spurts, and yet she managed to produce 2 incredible bestsellers. And she used her research and all these personal memories to really do a terrific job on her books. So, here. I hope this is right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if she can do it, heck. All these books were enhanced by research. In the Great Gatsby and Dracula were contemporary novels when they were written, but the authors just had a great knack of bringing in things that would tell later readers, even 100 years down the line, it makes the era come alive for you. You know, you feel the foggy moors and the castle in Dracula, and you absolutely feel the jazz age and the flappers and the excitement in Great Gatsby. And there's even fantasy worlds have to do research and be consistent. And Harry Potter books, I think everybody can learn something from them. She created a world, and then she made it a part of every single scene. So every scene you read in Harry Potter, you have something magical going on. They're never just having a conversation. They're having a conversation while ghosts are drifting through, or while candles are floating above, or while somebody next to them is trying to turn a rat into a teacup. You know, it is constant. Magic is in every single scene. Okay, we're not writing magic, but your era, the place that you're writing about, should be in every single scene. It's almost a character, and you have to bring it in for people. These are nonfiction books. I won't dwell on them, except to say that the book 3 Cups of Tea is a great example of what can happen when somebody does not do their research. I don't know if you remember the 60-minute expose that really ruined the guy's reputation. And he was doing terrific work. He was building schools in Afghanistan, mostly for girls. And somebody picked up his memoir book that he had written. And I don't think he's a research-oriented person or a detail-oriented person at all. He dashed off this book, didn't fact-check it, didn't do anything. Turns out he got a lot of stuff wrong, and it made him look like a fraud. I have no idea if he really was a fraud or not, but it ruined him. So that's the point. 3 Cups of Tea by Mortensen. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about how to do research. And my first point is that you are all your own best research tools. You have 5 senses. Most of your readers have 5 senses. You have to bring all those 5 senses into play and tell your reader constantly what your characters are seeing, what they're hearing. Are they hearing jackhammers and shouting, or are they hearing birds singing in a peaceful setting? Are they smelling flowers in the air or ozone in the air? Are they tasting the salt from the sea that's so close? What are they feeling? How damp is it? What's the sky like? You have to build that whole world for your readers, and use your 5 senses to do it. The other thing is, whatever you're writing about, if you can possibly go to that place, definitely do it. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to. I get teased a lot for my research trip to France, and of course I took a lot of pictures. But when I went to France, I found out that the light's different there, the sky's different there, everything's different there. Things I would not have known about the places I write about, like how windy it is in Brittany. I would not have known that without going there. And I took my little digital camera and set it on the highest possible setting when I took pictures of the seashore, of a meadow, of trees. This is another seashore picture, because people live by the seashore in Brittany. A forest. And when you set your camera to the highest possible setting, I even had to buy an extra memory card for it, you can zoom in and see very clearly the little things in the picture. So that is a great thing to do. When you go to that place that you're going to, either at the hotel or at a visitor center or whatever, grab all the free brochures you can about the things in the area. And be sure to get those little maps they give you in a lot of places. You know, here's the plaza, or here's the downtown, here's all the streets, here's all the wine bars, here's all the restaurants that pay us to advertise for them, you know, that kind of thing. But chances are the streets have not changed that much in the last 100 or 200 years. Things are still in the same place. So you can walk from, say, the fountain in the middle of town to the historic house, and you can see for yourself how strenuous a walk it is, how far it is, what people might have seen on the way. So save all that information too. But eventually you're going to get to a point where you need books, and you need articles and stuff like that. That's where we are. So I kind of thought up a topic. It was a 19th century orphan runs away and joins the circus. So just doing a Google search, I came up with books on circus history, which anybody can do. But besides just books on circus history, remember you're going to want books on everyday life in the 19th century, his clothing in the 19th century, orphans and orphanages in the 19th century, everyday life in the in the 1800s, and I have my own everyday life in the Wild West. This is a series of books that came out about 20 years ago, and they have everyday life in ancient Rome, everyday life in ancient Greece, everyday life in a medieval castle, all that stuff. And they go through and tell you all the basic information that is sometimes very hard to come by. You know, what kind of bed did people sleep in? You know, if you didn't have any money, did you have a bed? What did you eat for breakfast when you got up? What was available? What kind of clothes did you put on? What kind of underwear did you have? How did you get from place to place? What was your day like? What did you have to watch out for? So all that stuff is in there, and those are great books. Biographies and diaries are wonderful sources of research for you, and just ideas. They will give you the best ideas. I did my master's thesis on the gold rush, and I went up to Sacramento and San Francisco to go to state historical archives and stuff like that. And I got to look at tons of diaries that men had written during the gold rush. And of course they wanted to tell their families what they were seeing, because nobody back east had ever seen anything like this before. They saw Indians. They saw men with guns everywhere. They saw, when they sailed into San Francisco, there were so many boats there, they could hardly see the ocean. People were so anxious to get to the gold, they'd sail their ship into San Francisco, everybody would jump ship, and they'd leave the ship there. San Francisco Bay is part of the city is covered with abandoned ships down at the bottom. But when you read these people's, and some of them are not very nice people. Some of the things they write are racist and nasty, but it's what people were thinking in those days. You get a first-hand account of what they thought of what they saw. So diaries and biographies are just great if you can get them. Most of them are not published. Civil War diaries, people are still finding Civil War diaries up in Grandma's attic. You know, never seen the light of day, never been published. So you have to call historical societies and talk to them and find out what they have in order to get a hold of them. A lot of times they're typed and when I went up to San Francisco, there were a ton of Gold Rush diaries that had transcripts that had been typed in the 1940s, that were still sitting there, because graduate students that are looking for a project, they'll grab a diary and transcribe it and maybe annotate it. So those are the kind of books you'll need. And if I really was writing a story about circuses in the 19th century, I'd have to remember that readers today, when they hear circus, they think Cirque du Soleil, right? And if they think orphanages, they think Annie, or they think foster care. But the 19th century was a completely different world, and circuses were tawdry, and anybody who came near them got fleas all over them. They were nasty and dirty. A lot of people were very dishonest. So you have to paint this picture for your reader every step of the way. Let them know how things are. I have two ways to find books, and when you're looking at these, where do I have it? When you're looking at these circus books, you want to know what the good ones are. I would always go with the ones that come from a university press, first of all, because they do care about their reputation, and they don't publish flaky stuff. They're usually very good about that. But my two ways of finding books, the first one is Google Books. And what you do is you type a search term into Google, and instead of just hitting return, you go to more and then drag down to books. So you want only books. And Google a few years ago started scanning thousands and thousands of books. And it was pretty controversial, and they were taken to court a few times and battled it out, but they were able to go ahead with this project. The thing is, you can't really read these books on Google. I've tried. It's impossible, but you can get a sense of what kind of information they have. So if you do Google Books, you type in like circus history, and you do Google Books, you end up with a page of results like this that has the book title, the book thumbnail of the book, and it says either preview or, and like this one is preview or snippet view. Now snippet view, preview gives you this page, and the difference between the two is preview takes you to the page where your search terms first appear, and they're highlighted. Snippet view will only give you 3 or 4 lines, and that's it, just 3 or 4 lines of the book. It's probably because the author is still alive and they're trying to protect themselves. But over on the left here, you have all the publication information, who published it, what year, all the authors, all the editors, the title, everything. You even have places where you can buy it. But you get usually enough of an idea just looking at this page so that you know if this is a book you want. Maybe it's not. Maybe you look at it and think, oh, it's bogus information, or I've already got all that information. These little horizontal bars on the, what would that be, the right over here, are other places where your search term appears. So you can click on them. You can try to scroll through Google Books to go to the next page. It never works. You always jump like 30 pages and you can't find your place. It's a pain. And that's why you can't read a book on Google Books. But that's one way to find a list of books that you could really use. What do we have here? The other place is Wikipedia. I'd never ever tell anyone to do their research on Wikipedia. We all know anybody can create an account. Anybody can load up Wikipedia with whatever they want, even if it's crazy. But instead of using it for research, what you want to do is type in a search term, find an article, and then skip through the article to the bottom of the article. And there you'll find listed a bibliography very often, a whole bibliography with all their sources listed. Or you'll find, it might be called citations, notes, references, external links. They call it a variety of different things, but it's full of sources for you, full of resources. Some of them have live links, and you can look them up online. Others, you can just get the name of an author in a book, or the name of an author and an article, and the name of the journal or magazine that author was published in. So now you have a whole list of the books that you need. Okay. You're going to get them at the library, of course, unless you're independently wealthy and can just go ahead and order them all. But most of us will go to the library.
Google Books has a thing, find in a library too.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, it's not only where you can find it, but
where you can
at
find
some
it in a
point, I think
library?
it's a little lower, find in a library.
Oh, okay,
And
that would
that's
be
so
great.
helpful.
That would be.
Unless it's in
Okay,
Germany.
because I was going to talk about interlibrary loan next. And how have you guys used ILL, interlibrary loans? Okay, I figured you probably knew all about it. I would. The LA City Library has like 65 branches. So chances are, whatever book you want, there's a good chance it's in one of those branches. And if it is, you can request the book and it doesn't cost you a dime. Request it in 4 or 5 days. They'll ship it to the library nearest you, call you, send you an email and let you know it's there. And that's great. The LA County Library has around 40 branches, and then there's dozens of others. But even if you don't find it in your local library, you can request it, because all the libraries in the United States and worldwide, they network, and they'll send each other materials. So the thing is, you've got to check with different libraries, because the LA City Library now charges $10 for an interlibrary loan, which is, I think, outrageous. And if you need 10 books, that's $100 right there, just to look at the books for a couple of weeks. So I have a library near me in Palos Verdes that only charges $2 for an interlibrary loan. And I suspect Pasadena probably has a pretty good rate. It seems like the most well-funded libraries have the lowest rate for their patrons. So whenever I need to borrow, interlibrary loan a book, I always go to Palos Verdes, of course. I never go to LA City. But what you want to do to request the interlibrary loan, you can go right into the library and sit down with the reference librarian, and she'll do it for you. But you can also sit at home, go to your library site, and look for WorldCat, which stands for World Catalog. Now, WorldCat also has their own website. You could look at worldcat.com, but it's easier to request the book if you're already on your library's website. So let's see. Where are we here? Okay. This is the page you see when you go into WorldCat, and it's under Research Tools. In the LA City Library, I had to go to Research and Homework, and then it had an alphabetical list of all their research tools and databases, and in W you find WorldCat. Usually it's not that hard to find, but research tools, internet tools, something like that, you'll find it. The WorldCat page has all these search options. You could actually start your research there. You could type in a topic and look for it that way. But what is easiest to do is, if you've already got the name of a book, type it into the first line, go over here to the right and type in and write down the title. Maybe put the author's name in the next line, go over here to the right, drop in author, and it will bring up the book for you. Now, it'll bring up a list of books, and almost every book I've looked for had 2 or 3 entries in WorldCat. It's not just one book. Because they type the name or sort it differently, there's 2 or 3 entries. And it'll tell you how many libraries it's in, etc. And if it's in the library that you're logged into at the time, it'll tell you your library has this already. It's highlighted in turquoise here, and so you don't even have to request it. Your library has it somewhere. But if you do have to request it, there's a little, also in turquoise, interlibrary loan. You just click on it, tell them you want the book. If you have not already entered your library card number, it'll ask for it then. It'll tell you that there's a charge involved in this, and you have to okay that, and then you're done. You just sit back and wait, and in a week or 2, maybe a month, your library will send you an email saying, we've got a book here for you. Now, when you get a book through interlibrary loan, it depends, the lending library sets all the rules. If they only want you to have it for a week, that's all you get it for. If they say you can have it for a month, you get that. I actually had one book come, and the library told me, well, they won't let you take it out of the library. You can do your research, but you have to do it here. You can use our photocopy machine, but you have to do it here. So the lending library can set whatever rules they want. This also works for articles in journals and magazines. And very often what I found is when you request an article through WorldCat, the lending library usually just photocopies the article and sends it to you. So you have that to keep. You don't have to worry. They don't have to worry about their magazine being returned, and you don't have to worry about returning it. You just get it. Okay? So, one other thing I found out, I'm not really sure where this fits, but if you're having to do citations in your work, there are now plugins and apps that will do citations for you. And the EndNotes was highly recommended to me. So when you're looking for books, you can just click on EndNotes once you download it, and it will do a citation for you for that book. All the information you need, you can set it up to do MLA style or APA style, however you want it, but it will do the citations for you. Okay? So, next thing I'm going to talk about are some tips for, let's see if I can make this stay up, some tips for organizing your research. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but yeah,
this is a biggie.
Okay. From the first book you pick up to do research on, start keeping a list of the books that you've looked at and articles. And I don't care if you keep it on a legal pad or I'm the queen of Excel. If you enter it on Excel with one column for the author, one column for the title, and maybe even a third column for the particular bit of information you are getting from that book. And then you can sort it alphabetically any way you want. But do that from the beginning, because I guarantee you that after 3 or 4 months of doing research, you're not going to remember what books you looked in. And somebody's going to say, oh, you know what, you should read this particular book. It has exactly what you're looking for. And you get all excited and you maybe even order it from Amazon or order it through the library or whatever, and you get it and you look at it and you go, oh, wait a minute, I've read this before. You know, and it happens to everybody. So keep that list of books that you, books and articles that you look in. You're going to need both online and physical files, because physical files, you're going to be going to the library, you're going to be photocopying pages from books. And when you photocopy pages from books, be sure to write the name of the book on it, because that's another thing you will not remember. Even by the time you get home, you're not going to remember what page came from what book. So write the name of the book on it. But where are you going to put it? So I had an accordion file for Death Speaker. I had one pocket was for Druids and religion. One pocket was for the Roman army and everything I needed to know about Roman armies and how they were organized and how they were dressed and how they moved. And another pocket was for the geography of France, calendars, the timeline, phases of the moon, so I didn't make a mistake about, having a girl walk under the moonlight one night and having a new moon the next night. All those things I had separate packets for. And you want to do the same thing online, because you're not going to print out everything. It would be a waste of paper. You'll be looking online at all these different websites, and some of them will have great pictures. Some of them just have a paragraph of information. Go ahead and copy and paste it onto a document. Copy and paste a picture onto a document. It's for your use. But just like when you photocopy something, you write the name of the book. When you copy and paste onto a document, be sure to grab the URL of the site you're at, so in case you need to go back there for anything. But you don't need to print it out. You can refer to it whenever. I had like 15 pages of what chestnut trees look like, in all different, and I hardly used any of it, but in all different times of the seasons of the year, what the fruit looked like, all this stuff. And yeah, I could have printed out all these pictures, but I didn't really need to. I knew exactly where it was. I had a file system, and I could just look it up whenever I needed it. So you're going to need both online and physical files. Keep a record of all your expenses. Every time you do an ILL request, the library is happy to do a receipt for you, and you can just stuff it in a shoebox. Keep a notepad in your car every time you go any place that's connected with research. Write down your mileage. When you actually start selling books, the government is going to tax you on the profits you make from those books. And so you want to do everything possible to show that I spent money on these books. It's not pure profit. I actually spent money, and you can deduct all these things. I don't know how the new tax law is going to affect that at all. But I would save all my receipts, do your mileage, everything. And, you know, if you can save $10 or $20 or $50 on your taxes, I think it's worth it. Okay? Let's see. Also, keep a list as you're writing. Keep a notepad to write down questions that occur to you while you're writing. Because when you're in writer's mode, you don't want to stop and do research. You know, you're just writing along and you have your character in 1920s New York. He's in Times Square, he hails a cab, he jumps in, he goes up to Harlem. Okay, what does the cab look like? How did he know the cab was available? How long is that ride going to take? What's it going to cost him? You want to know all these things, but you don't want to stop writing to look them all up. So just keep a list by your computer of all the things you need to check out on your next research trip. I had my list for Death Speaker included things like how far would a group of travelers walk in a day? How far could people, if men were in a chariot, how far could they ride in an hour? How is butter made? You know, really basic stuff. How long, I was horrible to my main character, how long does it take a broken hip to mend? And I actually was talking to another writer one day. We were talking about the questions we needed answered. And I mentioned this about I needed to know how long it would take a broken hip to mend, how long before she could put weight on it, what kind of crutches would she have. And the woman I was talking to says, oh, my cousin is an orthopedic surgeon at UCLA. He'll answer that. I go, well, I don't want to bother you. And she says, oh, no, he loves me. He will do anything for me. Send me your questions. So I did, and in like 3 or 4 days, I had like a 4-page answer to all my questions about how a broken hip heals if there's no hospitals, no, you know, he knew I was talking about a time 2,000 years ago. He mentioned the things that could go wrong, what kind of a limp she would have, all this stuff. It was great. Now, when you're learning all this stuff, too, I kind of feel like there's a caveat. You can't put all your research into the book. You've got to figure out when to back off. We've all read books that had too much research in them, that read like a textbook. And we've all read books that didn't have quite enough, so you didn't know what was going on. So you've got to find that balance. What I've learned is that the information you want is out there somewhere, and you kind of have to figure out who would that information be valuable to. And to that end, I've gone to a few conferences. One was put on by a journalism society. Every once in a while they'll put on free day-long conferences on gathering information. They're really geared towards investigative reporting. I've also gone to like a 2-hour class that was done by a private detective and it was mainly for landlords. How would you vet a potential renter? How would you find out if they've ever been arrested? What can you do without spending a lot of money? I went to a library talk once, an hour and a half, on using the National Archives to trace your family's military records. And almost all libraries have local history societies or genealogical societies, and they tell you how to dig for information. And I've also know friends that have worked for city government for years, so I know if you ever want to find out the history of a building, the city has all the records, and they're public records. They'll tell you when that building was put up and by whom, when it was built. They'll tell you every business that was in that building, because every business had to buy a business license, and you can just go through the years. They'll tell you every time somebody pulled a permit to modify the building in some way, to put in a wall or take out a wall or something like that. So your city hall has tons of records. But basically, you just have to keep your eyes and ears open. In addition to doing the hardcore, I've got to get this book and research this time period and go up to Dublin, California and find out what winter is like up there. In addition to all that, there's millions of other ways to find research, and you just have to pay attention. And so that's basically it. I do have these handouts, and I think I have 20 of each, so I'm sure there's enough. These are the picture resources. There's a caveat on top, because this is a constantly changing thing, but there's all these places where you can find great pictures, Some of them are free, and some places like More File, you start looking for a picture, and all of a sudden they've booted you into a site where it's not free and you have to pay for it. So you have to be wary of it. The Library of Congress has great pictures. They have all the photo archives from Life and Look magazine, which is wonderful, but they tell you, flat out,